Launching is not the end goal. In a lot of cases, we see there's so much emphasis on the actual launch. While that is part of your marketing, it's not the end goal. You are serving your clients. That's the end goal. The program that you're launching, the course that you're launching, or opening up your one-on-one roster again, that is to serve your clients.
Welcome to the Astrology as a Strategy podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Banassi. I'm on a mission to help you amplify your influence so you can free up time to spend with your family while increasing your revenue. I'm an astrologer, business mentor, an adventure seeker, and a proud mama of 3 kids. Think of this podcast as your shortcut to more joy and ease in your business. Running a business is joyful, and when you're not having fun, you haven't cracked the code yet, but that's about to change. I share practical and short tools how to use astrology in your business and life. So let's get started on using your energy strategically to make a bigger impact, have more free time, and grow your wealth.
There is no right or wrong time to launch. I know it sounds funny, because this podcast is all about using astrology to guide you in when to launch. There is a more favorable time to launch, but there are also times where launching can be a little bit more challenging. I do not want you to think launching would fail if it's a more challenging time. This podcast is about how to identify when to launch. When are the things most favorable to you and what would serve you, but also would serve your clients? Because every business, but also every person is unique. Understanding that helps you to pick a time where it would be the most easy for you to launch. I also want you to consider that this is not just about launching a course, launching a group program. It could be opening up your one-on-one roster or scheduling a free training. It doesn't necessarily have to be this huge launch where you are going to launch your course or your group program. It could be anything that you're bringing out into the world is technically a launch. It could be a mini launch, it could be a super long launch. Everything that you bring out into the world is basically a launch. So I want you to start rethinking launching. In the online marketing space, there is a lot of emphasis on launching, having all the right funnels, having all the right things in place. And it could be quite a complicated and long process, the launch. But launching is not the end goal. In a lot of cases, we see there's so much emphasis on the actual launch. While that is part of your marketing, it's not the end goal. You are serving your clients. That's the end goal. The program that you're launching, the course that you're launching, or opening up your one-on-one roster again, that is to serve your clients. Now, I see some business owners living launch to launch, being exhausted, having a super complicated launch, having a team who runs a show, which really disconnects you from your business. Now, just to make sure, there's nothing wrong with having a team. But usually the bigger it gets doesn't necessarily mean that it gets easier. I personally choose for a lean team, so my time is spent towards serving my clients and creating awesome free content for you. That's a personal choice. But I want you to see that there is a difference. That if you want these huge, extensive launches, you will need more team members. And most of the time, not always, having a bigger team means that you have to be there more to make sure that everything goes well. To come back to the astrology, rethinking the way that you launch using astrology will help you tremendously to understand where your energy will naturally go in that moment. And in this case, astrology becomes another tool in your toolbox. Said this before, but it's so true. Astrology can guide you. Make sure that it doesn't dictate you. It can make the process of launching blissful and fun experience. It doesn't have to be hard. It actually, I started to enjoy my launches a lot. And I don't launch group programs or courses, or when I launch my podcast, or when I open up my one-on-one roster again, I enjoy it because I know I get to serve my clients. And not just after the launch for the people who signed up, but I make sure that the content that I'm sharing while I'm in that launch mode is so valuable that even if people don't sign up, they still get tons of valuable information out of it. Now let's give you a very practical example. I was talking to a client this week. So she had this amazing idea. It was about opening up her one-on-one roster, a new service that she's going to offer. And she reached out to me and said, hey, we're in the middle of Mercury Retrograde. I have this awesome idea. What do you think? For me, it's not an instant reaction to say, Mercury Retrograde, don't launch anything, don't announce anything. Generally, it's not the best time, but it doesn't mean that it's the worst time. So what I did is I looked at her chart. I looked at what is happening. Now we have a new moon solar eclipse coming up. So we're in the middle of eclipse season. That is one thing that I look at, because when you're in the middle of eclipse season, there are curveballs, there are things happening that you don't expect on top of Mercury retrograde. So I advised her. First of all, I asked her, what does your gut tell you? What is your instinct? What do you feel? She mentions she was super excited and really wants to move forward, but is not quite sure if this week is right. I looked deeper into her chart and saw that next week, still in Mercury retrograde, but we're out of eclipse season, Mercury aligns perfectly with her sun, which helps her to speak clearly and more directly. It helps her to communicate in a more clear way. Now, that doesn't mean that she should be mindful that maybe some technical glitches occur, or the way that she communicates, that she has to make sure that what she puts out into the world is double checked. Whether that's a social media post, whether that's a video that she made, make sure that what you communicate is clear, because Mercury retrograde tends to shift or alter the way that we communicate or that people will perceive it. So if you are uncertain, make sure that somebody listens to your video, somebody reads through your email, to make sure that if it's an important launch to you, that you make sure that it is double checked, it's correct, and it works out. So when you want to work with this energy, it's really good to have a look at your own natal chart. Now, you don't have to be an astrologer for that. I will just walk you through step by step. Now, you might want to take some notes when I go through this, because it's very helpful to you to understand where your energy is naturally going to go towards and where you might need a little bit of support. So we're starting with Aries rising. The reason why I talk about the rising sign is because it directly correlates to where you have the Gemini energy, which is where Mercury is retrograding in at the moment, because then I know what house it's in and I can more clearly give you directions. If you don't know your rising sign, you can simply go to astro-seek.com. You can fill out your details there and find your rising sign. So the first one up is Aries rising. When you have Aries rising, you will have Mercury transiting your third house. The message that you get for this Mercury retrograde is understanding whether your passionate storytelling is showing your true colors, or are you hiding behind your stories. So when you will be launching, be very mindful of the stories that you're using. Are you really showing you? Because remember, people buy stories. They don't buy the product, they don't buy the service, they buy the story. So make sure that you're really honest and open about who you are and not just talking about your services. When you have Taurus rising, you will have Mercury transiting your second house. A really good question you ask yourself is your internal story about building wealth. What is in alignment with your values and what is not? So when you are launching, this is very much related to feeling safe, feeling stable. Make sure you have support around you so you feel safe and supported. So you feel you have all of the space you need to play around and you don't have to worry about your safety net. For Gemini rising, you will have Mercury transiting your first house. This has a lot to do with your identity. Maybe you overly identify with your image. Do you love your image? Or maybe you can rewrite that story of your identity. When you want to launch, when you have Mercury retrograding in your first house, allow yourself to take a different perspective on who you think you are, on the way that you look at yourself and the way that you hold yourself as well. For Cancer rising, it happens in the 12th house, which is much more about quieting down when all the outside noise is shut out. What is your inner voice telling you? Can you flow with your thoughts and calm yourself? When Mercury is transiting the 12th house, there can be a lot of overwhelm and things that come too close. So when you have Cancer rising, make sure that you have enough time to calm yourself, meditate, journal. It's really a time to turn inwards. Leo rising, you have Mercury transiting your 11th house. Think about your fire and how has it fueled your network and expanded your reach, and where has it blocked you? Consider that when you are launching, you are tapping into your network and using it to benefit your launch, using it to benefit serving your people. Don't be afraid to reach out to people, but be very clear on your intentions. This is Mercury retrograde, so we want to make sure that when we talk to people, our intentions are clear up front so they know what to expect. Virgo rising, with Mercury transiting the 10th house. The 10th house is our career house. Now you would say this might be a unlucky placement. Actually, I really like this placement because it allows you to reevaluate, to reestablish your relationship with building your business. Now, in this case for Virgo rising, consider what systems are driving your business and your purpose forward, but also what systems are nourishing your soul. This will be a good time to really focus on the systems for Virgo rising, to make sure that you have everything in place. Have double checked it, because Virgos like to make sure that everything is in alignment and everything works. That is a quality that is really beneficial for Virgos, to make sure that you love to look at the details. Do that. Just don't over-identify with having to make sure that all of the details are correct, because you cannot know everything on forehand. So make sure you also let it loose a little bit. Libra rising. Libra rising has Mercury transiting the 9th house. What do you need to learn to explore your relationship between your belief systems and your business growth? When you would be launching during Mercury retrograde, when you have Mercury in your 9th house, explore the possibilities of doing it differently. Usually when we have set up belief systems, we can kind of get stuck in, but this is how I always do it. And also, don't be afraid to maybe piss some people off when you do it in a different way, because you are unique and you can allow yourself to go with that uniqueness. And make sure to think outside the box. Think about other things that you can use to grow your business, to launch. Scorpio rising has Mercury in the 8th house. The 8th house has a lot to do with being in control. Maybe you can imagine an open-ended outcome. Also, what messages can you hear through other voices? Scorpio benefits from listening a bit more than speaking during this Mercury retrograde. Allow yourself to go to this transformation. So if you are gearing up to a launch, make sure that you have some systems in place so you can actually let go of the control and trust a little bit more than maybe that you're comfortable with. This is more about going with the flow and connecting with the ease. And maybe sometimes that means you have to let go of something completely, just like the death and rebirth cycle. Let something die completely so that something else can come into its place. Sagittarius rising. Sagittarius has Mercury in the 7th house, which is all about relationships. How can you bring more light into your business relationship, but also your romantic relationships? How can you communicate to be the guiding light to others? This is taking the role of the leader. Even though the 7th house is not necessarily related to leadership, Sagittarius can be the guiding light to others. So make sure that your light is pure and your intentions are pure. That you don't launch for the sake of launching because it feels good, because you like to be seen, you like to get the attention. Launch from the right place in your heart, because I know you know how it feels to launch from a place of love and abundance. Capricorn rising has Mercury transiting the 6th house, which comes down to your daily routines. How is it adding to your success? And how does that relate to you showing up in your business? Now, when you have Capricorn rising and you're planning on launching during this Mercury retrograde, ask yourself what daily habits can you put in place to make sure that when things don't go as planned, you still feel safe and supported. You still know that you can be of service to your people, to your community, and it doesn't change the outcome. Be okay with things being different, but if you have a strong daily routine that you can rely on, then it's easier to then go with whatever comes up during this retrograde. Aquarius rising has Mercury in the 5th house. This is all about creativity, but also your inner child. How can you give your inner child the freedom to be creative and expressive? And how can you have more fun in your business? Aquarius tends to see the bigger picture, which is amazing. It likes to think outside the box. But how can we bring it back in and nurture your inner child? How can you let that creativity out during a launch? Especially launches can be very draining, but make sure that you keep it fun, keep it light, keep it exciting. It's not as heavy as we have led to believe. This is about having fun. And last but not least, Pisces rising. Pisces has Mercury in the 4th house. And this is about coming home to yourself. It is about having honest conversations with people in your home, but also having honest conversations with yourself. Coming home to yourself. So this might not feel like the perfect time to launch. And if that's a feeling that comes up, trust that and make sure that you feel comfortable in your own skin. That before you launch, you have filled up your cup first. You have spent time on your own, nurturing yourself, before you can start to nurture the connections in your business. So there you have it, all the 12 signs and all the different placements of Mercury in the houses. Again, let this not dictate you, but let this inspire you, let this guide you to understand when you are launching during this Mercury retrograde cycle that you know what to do, that you know how to prepare yourself. If you can take that into account, and if you now know where Mercury is transiting, this will help you tremendously in going more with the energies, flowing with it, and allow yourself to have fun, because that is one thing a lot of business owners forget. Have fun. This is a way to connect with your community. Launching is a way to serve your potential clients, but even if they don't sign up, you get to share your wisdom and your knowledge with them. And that is super valuable. And that is something I believe we should focus more on. So when you have planned a launch, make sure that you align it with what house Mercury is in. Just notice what happens. Notice what's going on. And then for the next time, check if you can plan it at a slightly more auspicious day that will support you and help you even more. I can't wait to hear from you. Let me know if you have had a launch in a Mercury retrograde, if you have things come up, things may be going a little bit different than you thought, or maybe you had an amazing launch. I'd love to hear from you. Please tag me in your stories on Instagram, because I love to hear your stories. That was it for this week. I don't want to make it too long for you. This is a topic that I can talk about for many hours. Today, I just wanted to explore what it looks like launching during a Mercury retrograde.
Thank you so much for listening to the Astrology as a Strategy podcast again. I love to hear your insight from this episode. Screenshot and tag me on Instagram in your stories or on your feed. You will inspire others to have more joy and ease in their business, and I love to see who's listening. One last thing. I love creating free content for you. Would you like to do something in return? Go to iTunes, subscribe, and leave a review. This helps the podcast to be found more easily so this message can reach more people. Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you next time.